Hello, Chris Nickel here, and we're going to look at the basic tools and techniques for image editing in Photoshop. Like everything, the emphasis here is going to be on non-destructive methods of editing. To start with, I want to show you the crop tool. If you go over to your toolbar, it's the fourth symbol down here, the two angled bars overlapping. The crop tool allows you to resize and rotate your image to create the ideal composition and cropping for the photograph that you're working with. You have a number of key options when working with the crop tool, namely the aspect ratio at which you are cropping. If you drop down the menu here, you have a number of choices, one of which is original ratio, which will actually crop it to the original dimensions of the image. This image has a ratio of 2 to 3, and if I grab the upper left-hand corner here of the crop box, you will see that it will maintain that aspect ratio even as I crop into the image. It has a number of preset aspect ratios for you to choose from. 1 to 1, which is a square, 4 by 5, which is a standard photographic dimensions, as is 5 by 7, 2 by 3, which again is the original aspect ratio of this image, and 16 by 9, which is the aspect ratio common amongst televisions. It also gives you a number of crop presets that allow you to pick both the size and the resolution of the image once it is cropped. This cropping method is likely to remove information from your document, so I'd recommend against using it because it is a destructive practice. At best, I would say go ahead with one of the preset cropping ratios, or you can go ahead and manually insert a cropping ratio of your own here. The left-hand box is the width of the image, and the right-hand box is the height. If you have the width and height set, but placed into the wrong boxes, you can easily switch that just by hitting this double arrow button, and it will go ahead and switch that from width to height. You also have a straighten button, which once clicked will bring up this cursor, which will allow you to trace a vertical or horizontal line in the image. If you click and drag and let go, it will automatically reset the image so that the line that you drew becomes either perfectly parallel or perfectly horizontal or perfectly vertical in relationship to the edge of the image. You also have the ability to project a grid over the image, a grid of different sizes that can help you pick the proper cropping and align your image to elements along the edge of the frame, to elements within the center of the frame. Finally, you have a checkbox here that says delete cropped pixels. Once again, deleting the pixels that you crop out is going to be a destructive editing process. You never want to delete pixels from your image because it doesn't give you the option of going back and correcting it after the fact if you change your mind about your cropping. So make sure that you have that box checked off once you have finished selecting the cropping that you want. The content aware checkbox does allows you to crop outside of the original image and will create new image to fill that area. This is sometimes effective, sometimes not, and I would generally recommend not trying to add image area and just staying within the image that you made with the camera. Once you have a cropping that you're happy with, you can click the check button up here to accept the changes, or you can click the circle with a slash in it to reject them. I'm going to go ahead and select that. Now you'll notice that if I move away from the crop tool and then come back to it, I have the option of reverting to a previous mode, in which case I can bring back the pixels that I cropped away and have another option for how to do that. And none of those original pixels disappeared, and so I can always expand my crop box to include more of the image than I had the original time. This is vitally important to having flexibility in the way that you are editing your image moving forward. Now, continuing with the theme of non-destructive editing, I'm going to show you some tools that allow you to edit the contrast, the tone, and the color of the image, but do so by adding new layers, and so you are in no way affecting the original pixels of the image. Coming over to your Layers panel, and again, if you don't have your Layers panel open, you can always click on the Window menu heading and find the Layers panel listed right here. And as long as it's checked, it should be visible to you. So once that's opened and visible, come to the bottom of the panel and you will see this circle that is half black and half white, and it says Create New Fill or Adjustment Layer. If I click on that symbol, it brings down a whole menu of different options. The first one that I want to introduce you to is Levels. Levels opens up a picture of the histogram, which, as we discussed before, displays the tones that are present in the image. The far left of your histogram are your black tones, the far right are your white tones, and this gray slider are all the tones in between. The first thing you generally want to do is slide your white and black sliders right to the edge of the tones that are present in the image. Don't slide past that edge. You want to make sure that all of the tones are between that white and black and not outside of them. If you slide those bars so that your white or black tones go outside of those boundaries, you create what's called clipping, which means that you're eliminating information, and you'll have whole areas of your image that are just solid blocks of white or solid blocks of black. In the future, you may do this as an aesthetic decision, but for the starting off, I'd really like you to get in the habit of trying to keep as much of the information present in the image as possible. If you take the gray slider and move it back and forth, you'll see that this alters what is seen as the middle gray tone in the image. If I slide it to the left, I'm sliding it further away from the white, so I'm actually telling my file that all of these tones in between gray and white are from middle gray up, and therefore the light tones become lighter, or there's an increase in the number of light tones. If I slide it to the right, there's going to be an increase in the number of dark tones. Doing this, adjusting the gray slider, will adjust the overall tone of the image, make the image lighter or darker. What I'm looking for is the point on that slider where the overall image looks most pleasing and gives me good average tone. Now once I've done that, I can go in and adjust the color balance. And I do that the same way. I add a new adjustment layer, again working non-destructively, and the adjustment layer I want to add is this one, color balance. Color balance gives you three axes to work on: cyan to red, magenta to green, and yellow to blue. Sliding the slider back and forth one way or the other will increase or decrease the amount of those complementary colors in the image. What I'm aiming for is one of two things in the image. I'm trying to identify neutral tones in the image to make appear to look neutral. In this image that I'm working with right now, the concrete of the ground, the gray wooden fence in the background, and the fur of the goat all should appear neutral. So I'm seeking to make adjustments in my slider that will achieve neutrality in those areas of the image. This takes some practice, so don't get frustrated if you're not particularly skilled at it right away. And sometimes it requires you going back and sliding the sliders back and forth over and over again until you feel like you have a good balance. Along the bottom here, they give you the choices of clicking down so you can see what it looked like before you made your last adjustments, or just reverting to the adjustments to the default, basically resetting your effort and allowing you to start again. If I click back to see before, I can tell you what I was looking at. The image, one of the things that I look for is whether the image is cool or whether the image is warm. Cool tends to be green to blue tones, and warm tends to be yellow to red tones. Right now I'm seeing a cool tone, which is similar to the cyan, and a little bit of blue. And so you'll notice that I've slid the red up to make it less cyan, and I've slid the yellow-blue axis towards yellow to make it less blue. I've also added a little bit more magenta. All these moves are aimed at warming the image up. Sometimes when you get to these images, you'll see that they're too warm, they may be too yellow or too red or a combination of those, and you'll have to make the opposite adjustments. Each image is dependent upon the light that was present on the scene and the way that the camera was setting the white balance at the moment of exposure. Each image is therefore going to require its own manual adjustment. It is rare that you will get an image that does not benefit from some sort of adjustment along these axes. Once you get the image to a point where you feel like the color balance is fairly satisfactory, again, take a look and see how much it's improved from that color adjustment. And you can go ahead and shrink your properties panel, which controls all of your adjustment layers. To show you a couple of the other image adjustment options, I'm going to switch images here because this is going to be a better image to demonstrate them with. The adjustment layer that I want to show you now is hue saturation. Hue is not something that we're going to work with at the moment. That's something that we'll come back to later in the term, but saturation is. Saturation is another word for the intensity or brightness of the color in an image. If I pull this slider for saturation to the left, you'll see it desaturates the image and makes it less and less intensely colored, and actually slides, if you go all the way to left, basically to black and white, where there is no color saturation whatsoever, or no color in the image. If I go the opposite way, the saturation of the image goes way up, and you get these incredibly bright, vibrant, almost neon colors. You'll see that this image to begin with was already a fairly saturated image, so I may not make an adjustment one way or the other. But just to demonstrate, I can show you that not only can you change the saturation of the image overall, but you can also change the saturation of individual colors within the image. By dropping down this menu that is always headed by master, I can go ahead and I can pick a very specific color within the image and choose to desaturate that. Now, one thing to be aware of is that the image, the color that you think needs to be adjusted may not always be the one that needs to be adjusted. Here I'm going to desaturate the green area of the plants, and you'll notice that as I slide green down, it does not actually adjust the greens. There's a trick to this. If you see this small button up here, which is a hand with two arrows on it, you can select this tool that will pull up an eyedropper, click in the area that you want to desaturate, and it will tell you which color it is that it wants to desaturate. Though this color appears green to me, it's actually the yellows that need to be desaturated if I want to desaturate them. So if I click in that image area at the color that I want to desaturate, I hold the click down and I can slide to the left and right to desaturate or increase the saturation on the image. So I'm sliding this to the left. I'm desaturating the yellow tones, which is making the green foliage less and less saturated. The effect of this, of course, is that it makes the red flowers appear even more saturated than they did before. If I move my eyedropper to another area of the image into the flower, you can see it will select reds as the color that is going to be affected. And if I slide that up, I can even further saturate those reds. Once again, you have the option to look back at your image before you made adjustments, or you can reset the adjustments altogether and start from scratch. So I'm going to reset these adjustments and show you one more adjustment layer that I think is quite useful. This one is the black and white, and by clicking on that, it actually turns your image a perfectly neutral black and white. So if you want to transform your color image into a black and white image, this is a way of doing it non-destructively. You're not removing any of the information from the file, but rather you're just putting a filter over the top that makes it appear black and white. The great thing about this filter is not only is it non-destructive and it makes a perfectly neutral image very consistently, but it allows you to adjust the tone as they appear in black and white of each individual color. So you'll see here, again, I have my slider hand that will allow me to select an area in the image. So if I go to the red flowers, if I slide to the right, you'll see that it makes all the red tones and only the red tones in the image brighter. If I slide to the left, it makes the red tones and only the red tones darker. So if I want to make this formally fairly low contrast image more dynamic, I can select specific image areas to go ahead and adjust individually based on color. I can click into the foliage and do the same thing. And again, now I have this very high contrast image that looks quite dynamic, where those separation in tones is created by specifically selecting and adjusting individual colors. Of course, with any adjustment you make, you can turn the visibility on and off of that adjustment layer, and you can go back and forth between the original image and the image that as you see it with the adjustment. This is a great way to observe the effect of the change that you've made through adding your adjustment layers. And if you decide that you don't want the change at all anymore, you can always go turn off the layer's visibility and just leave it turned off, or go all the way by making sure that the image adjustment layer that you want to get rid of is highlighted, and then hit the trash can, and that will delete that layer for good. And then you can go back and start again with your image adjustments. Through these 4 key tools, your levels, your color balance, your hue saturation, and your black and white adjustment layers, you can make an incredible difference in the appearance of the images that you take for yourself or that you are handed to edit. I once again would remind you that almost every single image that you will encounter could benefit from some sort of image adjustment, whether it's a combination of 3 or more of these individual filters or just one of them. So take some time to experiment with these adjustment layers and see what a difference you can make in your own images.